Autism and obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD, have one major similarity, at least on the surface. Do you want to know how to tell the difference? In both autism and OCD, what you see a lot of and what is a diagnostic symptom is a thing called repetitive actions. Stereotypically, this can be things like lining up objects or counting out numbers out loud or in your head over and over again, or constantly rearranging things so that they're in very particular orders. That is to say, if I see a person engaging in repetitive behaviors with no clearly obvious functional purpose, this could be a really strong indicator of either autism or OCD. Repetitive behaviors are central to OCD and very, very common in autism, and at a glance, they might look identical. Let's explore why. In both situations, these behaviors are performed frequently, intensely, and in ways that might seem unusual to outside observers. For example, someone with autism might repeatedly arrange or stack objects based on their size or color or other categorization. Someone with OCD might repetitively count objects or arrange them in certain orders so that they feel just right. In both cases, the individual might become quite distressed if they become interrupted or are unable to complete this behavior. And the repetition can seem rigid and like there's a purpose driving it. It's not random. Because of these similarities, it's quite easy to understand why people would be able to mistake one for the other. But the way to differentiate them is to understand the key difference in why these behaviors are occurring. The key difference lies in motivation, the why behind the repetitive actions. In autism, repetitive actions often stem from a desire and need for sensory regulation, routine, and comfort. For example, a child with autism might line up cars in a certain order because it feels soothing, predictable, or visually satisfying. Or a person might flap their hands or repeat certain phrases to themselves because this is their way of self-regulating when they feel overwhelmed. These actions are often quite calming for the person, and they aren't necessarily tied to anxiety or fear. In OCD, however, repetitive actions are driven by an urgent need to neutralize an intrusive thought or to prevent something bad from happening. For example, a person might constantly reorganize their desk because they fear that disorganization will lead to some kind of catastrophe. Or they might wash their hands compulsively 30, 40, 50 times because they desperately are obsessed with and fear contamination and what's going to happen if they don't engage in this hand washing. The behaviors are absolutely not inherently enjoyable and at best serve to temporarily reduce the amount of distress that the person is feeling. And really importantly here, people with OCD often describe feeling trapped in a cycle. They know that their fears are irrational, but they feel powerless to stop the compulsions. So it's through an understanding of the motivation behind the repetitive actions that you can tell the difference and know if what you're seeing is repetitive actions from autism or OCD.